Welcome, dear viewers, to another episode of our channel, dedicated to urban legends and mysterious tales from around the world. Tonight, we're diving into the fascinating world of Japanese folklore, specifically the Kappa legends of Tono. Before we begin, I want to emphasize that the story you're about to hear is a work of fiction inspired by traditional Japanese folklore. While based on real legends and locations, the narrative that follows is purely for entertainment purposes. So sit back, relax, and let your imagination run wild as we explore this mystical tale. That being said, who knows? Perhaps there's a grain of truth hidden within these ancient stories. After all, Japan is a land where the line between reality and legend often blurs. So, let's begin our journey into the mysterious world of the Kappa. Our story takes place in the remote village of Miyama, nestled deep in the mountains of Tono, a region in Iwate Prefecture famous for its folklore. This secluded village, surrounded by dense forests, is connected to the outside world by only a single narrow road. A clear stream runs through the village, like a winding silver ribbon. Beneath its surface, secrets sleep, unknown to anyone. On a summer day, a young man arrived in this village. His name was Takeshi Suzuki. Born and raised in the city, Takeshi was a graduate student studying folklore. He had chosen the Kappa legends of the Tono region as the subject of his thesis. To gather first-hand accounts, he had traveled all the way to this remote village. Takeshi arrived in the village at dusk. Under the orange-tinted sky, the village was eerily quiet. Wind chimes hung from the eaves of houses, tinkling softly in the gentle breeze. However, there was something ominous about their sound. At the entrance of the village, Takeshi encountered an old man with graying hair and a face etched with deep wrinkles. The man's eyes shone with the wisdom of years, yet they also seemed to harbor an indescribable sadness. "Well, young man, what brings you to this remote place?" the old man asked in a friendly manner. Takeshi introduced himself and explained the purpose of his visit. "Oh, researching the Kappa, are you? How interesting." The old man smiled. "I'm Sato, the village head. When it comes to local stories, I'd say I know more than anyone around here." Takeshi was delighted. He hadn't expected to find such a valuable source of information so soon after arriving. "Village head Sato, could you tell me about the Kappa?" Takeshi asked eagerly. Village head Sato's expression turned thoughtful. A flicker of fear seemed to pass through his eyes. Slowly, he began to speak. "The Kappa, you say? Indeed, our village has had Kappa stories passed down for generations. But they're not mere old tales." Takeshi listened intently. Sato continued. "In this village, Kappa are both feared and respected. They're the guardians of our river, you see." "Guardians?" Takeshi repeated, somewhat surprised. "That's right. Since ancient times, our villagers have coexisted with the Kappa. They sometimes cause mischief, but they also help the villagers, especially when it comes to water management. We couldn't have managed without the Kappa's power." Takeshi took notes eagerly as he listened. This was a fascinating perspective, viewing Kappa not just as mythical creatures, but as beings to coexist with. This was a new discovery. "But you know," the village head lowered his voice, "things have been strange lately." "Strange? How so?" Takeshi leaned in to listen. "For the past few months, the river's water level has been fluctuating wildly. It's unlike anything we've ever experienced before." And the village head looked around, as if checking for eavesdroppers, and lowered his voice even further. More and more villagers claimed to have seen Kappa. In broad daylight, no less. Takeshi held his breath. In the modern world, it was rare to hear someone speak so seriously about Kappa sightings. Moreover, Kappa were typically believed to be nocturnal creatures. There's more, the village head added. At night, people have been hearing odd sounds from the river, like singing, but among those who hear it, some disappear the next day. Takeshi felt a chill run down his spine. This went beyond the scope of folklore research. It seemed that something truly out of the ordinary was happening in this village. Village head, these people who disappeared. What happened to them? The village head heaved a deep sigh. We searched for them, of course, but it was as if they had vanished into thin air. Not even a trace was found. Takeshi felt his throat go dry. After hearing all this, he was certain that something extraordinary was lurking in this village. While part of him was terrified, another part felt a sense of mission. He had to uncover the truth behind these occurrences. Village head, could you tell me more about this? The village head hesitated for a moment, then slowly nodded. All right, but not here. It's not safe. Let's meet tomorrow morning. And the village head fixed Takeshi with an intense gaze. At night, never go near the river. That night, Takeshi slept in the guest room of the village head's house. However, he was awakened in the middle of the night by a strange sound. The faint sound of flowing water, and overlaying that, what seemed to be singing. Despite his confusion, Takeshi was drawn to investigate the source of the sound. He went outside. The village, bathed in moonlight, was enveloped in a mystical atmosphere. However, within that beauty lurked an inexplicable eeriness. Takeshi, led by the singing voice, made his way towards the river flowing through the village. The village head's warning flashed through his mind, but curiosity won out. Telling himself, just for a little bit, Takeshi approached the riverside. As he neared the river, the singing became clearer. It had a strange resonance, neither quite human nor entirely inhuman. Beautiful yet somehow sorrowful, it was a voice that stirred the listener's heart. And then, standing on the riverbank, Takeshi witnessed a breathtaking sight. On the moonlit water surface, several shadows were swaying. They seemed humanoid, yet clearly not human. They had what looked like plates on their heads, and their hands and feet appeared to be webbed. Takeshi couldn't believe his eyes. These were undoubtedly the legendary Kappa. The Kappa formed a circle, seeming to surround something. Looking closely, Takeshi realized what was at the center, a human child. However, the child didn't appear frightened. Rather, the child seemed to be playing happily with the Kappa. A faint light shimmered around the child. Takeshi hid in the bushes, unable to tear his eyes away from this unbelievable scene. The Kappa's singing now sounded like a lullaby, and the child seemed to be gradually falling asleep. Suddenly, one of the Kappa raised its face from the water surface and stared directly at Takeshi. Takeshi held his breath. Just as he thought he had been discovered, the Kappa seemed to smile faintly. Then, it put its finger to its lips, as if to say, "Shish." The next moment, the Kappa gently cradled the child and disappeared into the water. Only small ripples remained on the water's surface. Takeshi stood rooted to the spot, unable to judge whether what he had just witnessed was reality or a dream. After a while, when he came to his senses, Takeshi hurried back to the village head's house. However, when he tried to tell the village head about last night's events the next morning, strangely, the memory was hazy. It was as if covered by a fog, unclear. Still, Takeshi was certain that he had witnessed something important. At the appointed time, Takeshi met with the village head. The village head led Takeshi to an old shrine on the outskirts of the village. The shrine seemed to have been neglected for many years, with moss-covered stone steps and a decaying torii gate telling of its past glory. "We won't be disturbed here," said the village head, as he sat down in front of a small hokora behind the shrine. "Young man, this village has over 1,000 years of history. And throughout that history, we have always been with the Kappa." The village head began to speak. "Long ago, this area was plagued by frequent floods. The villagers prayed to the river god, but the situation didn't improve. Then one day, a young man threw himself into the river. He offered himself as a sacrifice, hoping to save the village. But strangely, that young man didn't die. He was saved by the Kappa at the bottom of the river." According to the village head's story, the young man negotiated with the Kappa and made a contract to protect the village. The Kappa would protect the village from floods and provide abundant water. In return, the villagers would respect the Kappa, and sometimes offer them tributes. That young man became the first bride of the river. He acted as an intermediary between the Kappa and humans. Takeshi was awestruck. This went beyond mere legend. It was the very history of the village itself. Since then, a bride of the river has been chosen in every generation. With the help of the Kappa, our village prospered. However, the village head's expression darkened. 50 years ago, the last bride of the river passed away, and no successor has appeared since then. Takeshi remembered the scene he had witnessed last night. That child was, could it be, village head? Are the Kappa trying to choose a new bride of the river now? The village head nodded gravely. Yes, the Kappa are trying to choose a new bride of the river. But that means taking someone from our world. Takeshi felt a chill run down his spine. Last night's child was the new bride of the river, chosen by the Kappa, and the missing villagers were. But that's not all, the village head continued. The Kappa themselves seem strange lately. It's as if they're in a hurry. Takeshi tilted his head. In a hurry? What do you mean? The village head heaved a deep sigh. Recently, the water quality in the river has been rapidly deteriorating. It seems development upstream is the cause. I think the Kappa feel their habitat is being threatened. That's why they're trying to urgently choose a new bride of the river, to appeal to the human world. Takeshi pondered this. The Kappa's actions were not just about maintaining tradition. Their very survival was at stake. What can we do? Takeshi asked the village head with a serious expression. The village head closed his eyes for a moment, then slowly opened them and stared intently at Takeshi. Young man, I believe you have a mission. Takeshi held his breath. The village head's eyes held a seriousness he hadn't seen before. You came from the outside world, but you believe in the existence of Kappa and are trying to understand them. Someone like you could become the new bride of the river. No, the messenger of the river for a new era. Takeshi was speechless with surprise. Him, a mediator between Kappa and humans? Yet somewhere deep in his heart, he felt that this was not a coincidence. But, village head, could I really? The village head smiled gently. Don't worry, we just need to awaken the power sleeping within you. Saying this, the village head took out an old scroll from inside the hokora. This is a secret text, passed down by the brides of the river through generations. If you read this, you should be able to communicate with the Kappa. Takeshi timidly accepted the scroll. At that moment, a strange sensation ran through his entire body. It was as if something that had been sleeping inside him had awakened. From that day on, Takeshi's life changed dramatically. During the day, he collected stories about Kappa from the villagers. At night, he pored over the secret text, and in the dead of night, he would sneak out to the riverside. For the first few days, nothing happened, but on the fifth night, as Takeshi stood by the river, a strange light began to leak from the water's surface, and slowly, from the water's surface, a Kappa appeared. The Kappa stared at Takeshi, then slowly opened its mouth. "Welcome, new messenger." Its voice was like the flow of water, smooth and somehow pleasant to hear. But at the same time, it was a voice that conveyed unfathomable depth and antiquity. Nervous but determined, Takeshi returned the greeting, as instructed in the secret text. "Yes, I have come as the new messenger." The Kappa smiled cheerfully. That smile was somehow human-like, yet clearly different. "We have been waiting for a new mediator for a long time. But you are different. You are a being that can bridge two worlds." Takeshi was confused. Bridging two worlds? What do you mean? The Kappa reached out to the water's surface, creating ripples. As the ripples spread, images appeared on the water's surface. Unfamiliar scenery was reflected there. This shows what this land used to be like. Clear water, rich nature, and a world where humans and we coexisted. The image changed, showing the current landscape. It showed the progress of development and the loss of nature. But now, this world is in crisis. Due to human actions, our habitat is threatened, and the rivers are being polluted. If this continues, we will disappear, and the Kappa's expression turned sad. Humans, too, will face great calamity. Takeshi held his breath. The future the Kappa spoke of was more serious than he had imagined. "Then, what can I do?" The Kappa stared into Takeshi's eyes. "You have two missions. One is to connect our world and the human world. The other is to restore the balance that is being lost." Takeshi felt the weight of responsibility but nodded firmly. "I understand. I'll do everything I can." The Kappa nodded with satisfaction, then suddenly took Takeshi's hand. "Then, come to our world. There's something I want to show you." Before Takeshi could answer, the Kappa pulled him into the water. Takeshi sank into the water without even having time to hold his breath. But strangely, he didn't feel suffocated. Rather, it felt as if he could breathe normally underwater. Guided by the Kappa, Takeshi descended to the bottom of the river. What he saw there was beyond imagination. At the bottom of the river, a completely different world spread out. Colorful glowing plants, fantastical fish, and the figures of many Kappa. What caught his eye the most was a huge crystal-like structure. Inside it, countless particles of light seemed to be dancing. "This is the source of our life," the Kappa began to explain. "This crystal maintains the vitality of the river, and has the power to enrich the surrounding nature." Takeshi was speechless with amazement. The world of the Kappa was far more mystical than he had ever imagined. However, the Kappa's expression turned sad. "The glow of this crystal has been weakening recently. The pollution from the human world has reached even here. Indeed, looking closely, part of the crystal seemed cloudy. If this continues, both our world and the human world will be in danger. If the river's life force is lost, the surrounding nature will decline, and ultimately, it could lead to large-scale disasters." Takeshi understood the seriousness of the situation, and felt a sense of responsibility. How can we avoid this crisis?" The Kappa stared into Takeshi's eyes. The answer lies within you. As a human who understands our world, you can do what others cannot. Saying this, the Kappa placed its hand on the crystal. At that moment, Takeshi's body was enveloped in light. This is part of our power. Use this power to appeal to the human world, convey the importance of protecting the river, and show the way to coexist with nature. Feeling the strange power flowing into his body, Takeshi nodded firmly. I will definitely fulfill this mission. When Takeshi returned to the surface, he was filled with a new determination. This was no longer just folklore research. It was about the coexistence of humans and nature, and with invisible beings. He had become involved in a grand theme. However, Takeshi didn't yet know how dangerous a journey this decision would lead him on. The next day, Takeshi reported to the village head about his encounter with the Kappa. The village head nodded deeply and handed Takeshi an old map. This map shows the locations of 7 sacred springs that once existed in this area, the village head explained. According to legend, these springs were the source of the Kappa's power, and also served as gateways connecting the human world and the Kappa world. However, their locations have been forgotten over time. Takeshi studied the map. Indeed, 7 marks were indicated, but they didn't match the current topography at all. If we can find these springs and awaken their power, the village head continued, we might not only save the Kappa's world, but also bring great blessings to the human world. Takeshi renewed his determination. I understand. I will surely find these 7 springs. However, the search proved to be more difficult than imagined. The map was old and vastly different from the current landscape. Moreover, many of the places where the springs were supposed to be were now occupied by houses or roads. Still, Takeshi didn't give up. With the cooperation of the villagers, he gathered clues one by one. Old legends, unnatural changes in topography, and occasional sightings of strange phenomena. After meticulously investigating all these, he finally managed to locate the first spring. It was in the garden of an old abandoned house on the outskirts of the village. The moment Takeshi stepped into the garden, he felt a change in the air. And from the grass at his feet, he heard a faint sound of water. Takeshi eagerly parted the grass and found a small spring. The water was clear, the bottom was firm, with stones bearing strange patterns. Takeshi cautiously reached out and touched the water's surface. At that moment, the scenery before his eyes began to distort. As if a door to another dimension had opened, the space around the spring began to warp. Before he knew it, Takeshi found himself standing in an unfamiliar place. It was an underwater world filled with fantastical light, similar to the place the Kappa had taken him before. However, there was a stronger sense of sacredness permeating this place. Welcome, new messenger. When Takeshi turned around, he saw an elderly Kappa standing there. Its appearance was clearly different from the other Kappa. Its entire body emitted a faint glow, and its eyes seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. I am the elder of the Kappa, who once guarded this land. The old Kappa began speaking in a slow, measured tone. I know you are trying to find the 7 springs, but be warned, it will be a dangerous journey. Takeshi steeled himself. Dangerous? In what way? The old Kappa heaved a deep sigh. Great power slumbers within the 7 springs. If used correctly, it could indeed save both worlds. However, the old Kappa's expression hardened. There are those who seek to misuse that power. They are trying to use the power of the springs to dominate the human world. Takeshi gasped. That's who would do such a thing? They are known as the Clan of Darkness. They are descendants of children born between Kappa and humans long ago. Some of them were seduced by power and fell from grace. They appear human but possess Kappa powers. And now, they're trying to monopolize the power of the Seven Springs. Takeshi realized that he had become involved in something far bigger than he had imagined. This was no longer just folklore research. It was an incident that could determine the fate of both worlds. What can I do? Takeshi asked, his voice trembling. The old Kappa smiled gently. You have a special power. The power to understand our world. While being human, to become a bridge between both. Use that power to find the remaining springs and awaken their power. If you do, you should be able to thwart the ambitions of the Clan of Darkness. Takeshi renewed his determination. I understand. Please leave it to me. Good. But be careful. The Clan of Darkness has likely detected your movements. They will try to obstruct you by any means necessary. The old Kappa placed its hand on Takeshi's forehead. I will give you this mark. When danger approaches, this mark will emit light and protect you. A small, faintly glowing mark in the shape of a Kappa's hand appeared on Takeshi's forehead. Now go. There's no time to waste. Find the remaining springs. As the old Kappa's voice faded away, the surroundings began to distort. Before he knew it, Takeshi was standing back in the abandoned house's garden. From that day on, Takeshi's grand adventure began. With the help of the villagers, he searched for the remaining springs one by one. The second spring was in the depths of a forest. Water seeped out from under a huge rock. When Takeshi touched the water, the surrounding trees suddenly seemed to come alive, swaying their branches as if to show him the way. The third spring was hidden in the grounds of an old temple. A small spring was concealed at the bottom of a moss-covered stone mortar. When Takeshi touched the water of this spring, he momentarily experienced the long history of the village, the encounter with the Kappa, the formation of the contract, and the long history of coexistence. These scenes flashed through his mind like a slideshow. However, while searching for the fourth spring, Takeshi encountered the Clan of Darkness for the first time. It was on a moonlit riverbank. As Takeshi was searching for traces of the spring based on an old legend, he suddenly heard a voice from behind. Well, if it isn't the new messenger of the river. You seem to be up to something interesting. When Takeshi turned around, he saw a man standing there. At first glance, he looked like an ordinary middle-aged man. But his eyes had an unusual gleam. Moreover, Takeshi sensed a familiar Kappa-like aura emanating from his body. Are you from the Clan of Darkness? Takeshi asked cautiously. The man laughed unpleasantly. You catch on quick. That's right, we're members of the Clan of Darkness. Special beings with both human and Kappa blood. What do you want? Takeshi felt the mark on his forehead beginning to heat up. It's simple. The man took a step closer to Takeshi. We want you to stop your search. No, preferably, we'd like you to join us. Talented young people like you are valuable, you know. Takeshi shook his head firmly. I refuse. I have a mission to fulfill. The man's expression instantly turned cold. Is that so? What a shame. In that case, we'll have to take you by force. At that moment, the man's form began to distort. He gradually transformed from a human appearance into something resembling a Kappa. However, it was different from the Kappa Takeshi knew. It exuded a more ferocious and evil aura. The transformed man lunged at Takeshi. Takeshi desperately tried to escape, but his opponent's movements were extraordinary. He moved smoothly, as if in water. "Give it up," the man shouted, reaching for Takeshi's leg. Suddenly, the mark on Takeshi's forehead emitted an intense light. Enveloped in this light, Takeshi's body seemed to change form like water, slipping through the man's grasp. What? The man's face contorted in shock. Surrounded by light, Takeshi, though his consciousness was hazy, experienced a strange sensation. It was as if his body had become water itself. Yes, just like a Kappa. Using this power, Takeshi managed to escape the man's pursuit. However, this incident had a profound impact on Takeshi. He never imagined such power slumbered within him. More than anything, he now knew that the existence of the Clan of Darkness was real. They were truly after the power of the Seven Springs, and they were trying to eliminate Takeshi, who was attempting to thwart their ambitions. From this day on, Takeshi's search became increasingly difficult. He was pursued by the Clan of Darkness day and night, and he learned that there were even collaborators among the villagers. However, Takeshi didn't give up. In fact, the more difficulties he faced, the stronger his determination grew. The fifth spring was inside an abandoned coal mine. Proceeding down a long, neglected tunnel, he found an underground lake spread out before him. At the center of this lake, a small spring was hidden. When Takeshi touched the water of this spring, he could feel the energy of the earth, like the heartbeat of the planet itself. The sixth spring was, surprisingly, at the bottom of an old well. In the center of the village, many villagers used this well daily, but the spring had been cleverly hidden so that no one noticed it. The water from this spring had the power to reflect people's thoughts and wishes. Takeshi was able to instantly understand the various feelings of the villagers. And finally, the time came to search for the seventh and last spring. However, this proved to be the most difficult. There were few clues, and the interference from the Clan of Darkness had intensified. One night, Takeshi was walking alone in the mountains. He was visiting a place mentioned in an old man's tale, seeking clues about the last spring. As he walked, relying only on moonlight, suddenly, a strange sight caught Takeshi's eye. The space in front of him began to crack, as if a glass were shattering. From the cracks, an otherworldly light leaked out. Takeshi cautiously reached out towards the crack. At that moment, "Stop!" Someone forcefully pushed Takeshi from behind. Takeshi fell to the ground and looked back. There stood the village head. "Village head, why are you here?" The village head looked at Takeshi with a stern expression. "That was close. We almost had an irreversible situation on our hands." The village head sighed. "That is the entrance to the last spring. But once opened, it can never be closed again. It would play right into the hands of the Clan of Darkness." Takeshi was confused. "But if we don't find the spring?" "You're right," the village head nodded. "But there's a correct way to do it. We must perform a ritual that has been passed down since ancient times." Saying this, the village head took out an old piece of parchment from his pocket. This describes the method for the ritual to open the last spring. However, to perform it, the village head's expression clouded. "A sacrifice is needed." Takeshi gasped. "A sacrifice?" The village head nodded gravely. "Yes, just as the first bride of the river threw herself into the river long ago. Someone must offer their life." Takeshi was at a loss for words. To think that the final barrier would be this significant. "I will." Takeshi began to speak. "Wait." The village head interrupted Takeshi's words. This is not a decision to be made lightly. Think carefully, and when you truly understand what it means to be prepared, come back. That night, Takeshi returned home with mixed feelings. To become a sacrifice, the words kept spinning in his head. To save both worlds in exchange for his own life. Was this the final trial imposed on him? However, another thought was also growing in Takeshi's mind. The power he had gained through his adventures so far, and his bond with the Kappa. Using these, might there not be a way other than sacrifice? Takeshi was about to face his final decision. Takeshi couldn't sleep all night. The decision to become a sacrifice or to seek another path weighed heavily on his mind. Before dawn, Takeshi quietly left the house. His destination was the riverside where he had first encountered the Kappa. He felt that he might find his final answer there. Upon reaching the riverside, Takeshi slowly immersed his feet in the water. The cool sensation of the water calmed his troubled mind a little. What should I do? Takeshi murmured. At that moment, the water's surface rippled unnaturally, and a Kappa emerged. It was the same Kappa Takeshi had first met. You seem troubled, new messenger, the Kappa spoke gently. Takeshi heaved a deep sigh. Yes, I heard that a sacrifice is needed to open the last spring. But is that really the only way? The Kappa remained silent for a while, but then slowly began to speak. Indeed, that's how it has been passed down since ancient times. However, the Kappa looked straight into Takeshi's eyes. You are a special being. A human who understands our world and can bridge both realms. For someone like you, there might be another way. Takeshi held his breath. Another way? The Kappa nodded. Yes, a ritual of symbiosis instead of sacrifice. A ritual of symbiosis? Our power already dwells within you. If you can unite that power with your human will, the last spring should accept you. Takeshi pondered this. Indeed, he had exhibited mysterious powers several times during his adventures. Was that the Kappa power sleeping within him? Then, how should I? The Kappa raised its hand, interrupting Takeshi's words. Your heart will guide you on how to perform the ritual. Just remember this. True symbiosis means understanding and accepting each other. And sometimes, it requires the resolve to give up a part of yourself. With these words, the Kappa quietly disappeared back into the water. Takeshi, engraving the Kappa's words in his heart, slowly stood up. Then, with a determined expression, he headed towards the village head's house. Meeting the village head, Takeshi declared his decision. Village head, I will not become a sacrifice. Instead, I will perform the ritual of symbiosis. The village head looked at Takeshi with surprise. A ritual of symbiosis? I've never heard of such a thing. Takeshi nodded firmly. Yes, after discussing with the Kappa, I've found a new way. It's a ritual to unite the Kappa power dwelling within me with my human will. The village head thought deeply for a moment, then slowly nodded. I see. I'll trust you. But be careful. The clan of darkness will try to stop you with all their might. Seeing this as their last chance, Takeshi responded with a resolute expression. Yes, I'm prepared. That night, Takeshi headed to the place where the last spring was said to be located. It was on top of a cliff at the edge of the village. There stood an old shrine. As he approached the shrine, the air suddenly became heavy, and then, indescribable shadows began to surround Takeshi. The clan of darkness. Takeshi muttered, on guard. From the shadows, an eerie voice echoed. Well done coming this far, boy. But this is the end. The last spring will be ours. The shadows all lunged at Takeshi at once. Takeshi desperately resisted, but he was about to be overwhelmed by their sheer numbers. At that moment, the mark on Takeshi's forehead emitted an intense light. Enveloped in this light, Takeshi's body once again began to change form like water. Takeshi felt the Kappa blood flowing within him, and at the same time, he strongly felt his will as a human. I see. So this is what symbiosis means. Takeshi closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Then, in his mind, he awakened the two powers. I will become the bridge between the human and Kappa worlds. An intense light radiated from Takeshi's body. This light dispelled the surrounding shadows. Impossible. Such power. Amidst the screams of the clan of darkness, Takeshi slowly approached the shrine. When he opened the shrine's door, there was a small spring inside. Takeshi cautiously reached out and touched the water's surface. Suddenly, the earth began to shake. A large whirlpool started to form around the shrine. The whirlpool gradually grew larger, eventually covering the entire village. Then, from the center of the whirlpool, a dazzling light shot up. When the light subsided, an incredible sight spread out before them. The entire village was covered by a huge crystal dome. Inside the dome, Kappa and villagers could be seen living together. Takeshi realized the magnitude of what he had accomplished. This was true symbiosis, a world where humans and Kappa understand and respect each other while living together. However, this scene didn't last long. Gradually, the scenery returned to normal. But something had definitely changed. The river flowed more clearly, the trees seemed more alive, and the villagers' faces were filled with a hope they had never known before. Takeshi sat down on the ground, exhausted. The village head came running up to him. "You did it, young man." The village head embraced Takeshi with tears in his eyes. "You've saved our village. No, both worlds." Takeshi managed a smile. "Yes, but this isn't the end. It's just the beginning." Indeed, this was only the beginning of a new story between humans and Kappa. Several years later, the village of Miyama had changed significantly. The river became clearer than ever before, and the surrounding nature grew even more lush. Above all, the lives of the villagers had changed. Interaction with the Kappa was no longer a secret. Occasionally, Kappa could be seen appearing and interacting with the villagers. They taught the villagers water management and agricultural techniques, and in return, learned about human culture. Takeshi played an important role as the bridge in this village. The book he wrote about his experiences became a national bestseller, touching the hearts of many people. Of course, reactions from the outside world varied. Many dismissed the story as mere fantasy. However, those who directly visited Miyama noticed that something was different. There was a mystical atmosphere permeating this village. Scholars also began to take notice of this village. They attempted to scientifically explain the miraculous recovery of the village's water quality and ecosystem. However, they couldn't fully unravel all its mysteries. And the clan of darkness, many of them lost their power in the final battle. However, they didn't completely disappear. Occasionally, their movements could still be sensed. Takeshi and the others remained constantly vigilant. One night, Takeshi stood alone by the riverside. As he gazed at the water's surface illuminated by moonlight, he reflected on his adventures so far. Suddenly, the water's surface rippled, and a familiar Kappa appeared. "Well done, our human friend," the Kappa said with a gentle smile. "Thanks to your courage and efforts, Both our world and yours have entered a new era. Takeshi bowed deeply. No, this is all thanks to your guidance. The Kappa chuckled. No, this is your power. We merely provided the opportunity. From now on, you humans are the main actors. Then the Kappa reached out its hand towards Takeshi. Come, a new adventure begins. Let's create the future of this world together. Takeshi took that hand. In his eyes was reflected a future full of hope. A world where humans and nature truly coexist. It's no longer a distant dream. Each person's small realizations and actions are surely changing the world. And somewhere, the Kappa are watching over that change. The story ends here, but the tale of the Kappa of Tono will surely continue. Well, everyone, thank you very much for listening to this long story until the end. How was it? If this story left even a small impression on your hearts, I would be overjoyed. In the real world, we may not be able to meet Kappa. However, as this story suggests, there are still many mysterious and unexplainable phenomena around us. By paying attention to these and using our imagination, our daily lives might become richer. In the next video, we'll talk about another fascinating urban legend. What truth lies behind that legend? And what will it teach us? Look forward to the next video. And remember, there must be mysterious stories hidden in your surroundings too. Try to notice the small wonders in your everyday life. Until we meet again, goodbye. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and leave your comments. We're looking forward to hearing your thoughts and your requests for urban legends you'd like us to cover in future episodes. See you in the next mysterious tale.